I kind of want an RFA update because we're still going through training camp, preseason's on, and there's like 3 RFAs still without their dossiers being resolved. And that's the Brady Tkachuk dossier in Ottawa and Elias Patterson and Quinn Hughes in Vancouver. Do you have any updates on those 3 players?
Yeah, well, they're still skating together in Michigan, so they're hanging out. That they've got some company with each other while working through the business side of things here. And what stands out to me really is the length of term on these contracts. I think that will ultimately hold the key to solving all 3 situations. For Brady Tkachuk, what he and the Senators had been focused on for the longest time, going back into the summer, was trying to reach an 8-year contract. We saw Thomas Chabot sign an 8-year deal a few years ago in Ottawa. I think that they are anxious to lock up their young core players, of course, which Brady Tkachuk is a part of. But now you're into camp. You're not finding the common ground needed to make that kind of deal work. I think Brady Tkachuk would like over $8 million average across an 8-year deal. And so I wonder about the 3-year option, if that's the way to solve this. Matthew, Brady's brother, signed a 3-year bridge deal with Calgary, the Calgary Flames, coming out of entry level. So there's some precedent there. It's a way to keep the number down for the team and for the player. Look, it gives you a chance to earn money right away, more money than you were earning on your first NHL contract, but also add to your resume and at a pretty young age, set you up to negotiate the next deal. And so, I think in Ottawa that could be, how the logjam gets broken up, or how maybe they find a solution to their stalemate. And, I would not be surprised to see him get in there on a 3-year deal. With the Canucks, it's a little different, right? The dynamic's different. Ottawa's got tons of cap space. The Canucks are trying to fit these guys into a small box, a small window of available money that they can spend. And I think in a perfect world, Jim Benning, Canucks management would love to sign both guys to an 8-year deal. I mean, they're 2 most valuable players on the team. You're buying safe years. You're basically buying them all for the rest of their 20s, when they're going to be at their peaks as NHL players. But what their values, what their comparables are on an 8-year deal, you can't do. And so generally what teams try to do, right, that they either try to sign you for 3 years, which we call the bridge deal, coming out of entry level. Some do 5 years. That was Austin Matthews with the Leafs, was one of the first. And, players like that, because they're only giving up 1 UFA year in doing that. And then teams, tend to like a 6, 7, or 8-year deal. Because as I say, you're buying basically the entire prime of a player's life. What you don't see almost ever is a 4-year deal, Julian, because that takes a player straight to free agency. You become a free agent after 7 NHL seasons or age 25. But I wonder with Elias Pettersson if there's a chance you see a 4-year deal. And if that happened, it would be extremely unusual. I'm led to believe he doesn't have much interest in the 3-year option. Naturally, the team would go push against the idea of a 4-year option just because, it does take him straight to free agency. But that might be one way to solve, his situation. Because as we mentioned in the last show, a 5-year contract maybe gets him to Kirill Kaprizov's number of $9 million. And so, a way to keep that average number down below is perhaps doing something which we don't see too often, is a 4-year deal. I wonder in the case of Quinn Hughes, if a 5-year contract makes the most sense for him, that would be 1 year shy of the 6-year deal Cale Makar got. And really what the teams and players are doing in this situation, right, is they're trying to bend all the comparables in their favor. I think, in both Hughes and Pettersson's, from their side of things, there's tons of favorable comparables now because the market has really taken a jump up during the summer. And so, I think we might see a little different terms on their deal also provide a solution. But, at this point in time, what I can tell you is it doesn't sound like anything is certainly inevitable or too close, but that can change with one phone call.
So basically those 3 guys are going to just continue skating and just hanging out and just being the best of buddies while the rest of their guys just continue on with their training camps. And not like any other team is going to look at their roster and be like, hey, how about we tender an offer sheet to one of these 3, right? Like that's what would set everything off. If some team was just,
It would, but I think that ship has sailed. You know what I mean? Like that was probably going to happen in the summer if it was going to happen. Just there's so few teams that have the money to really take a big swing on an offer sheet. And in the case of Quinn Hughes, he's what's called a 10-2C, I believe it is, but he's actually not eligible for an offer sheet because he hasn't played 3 full years in the league. So, I don't see the offer sheet really being the pressure point there, but October 12th, October 13th, whenever the first games are for these teams, that is a bit of a pressure point because no one wants to see a player miss real time and be playing catch up the whole year. And so I'm still optimistic you'll see some resolution here, but we got a couple weeks to play with before that necessarily comes to pass.
Especially for those two markets where those players are not just anybody. Those are players who are supposed to be cornerstones for each of those respective franchises. So appreciate the RFA update, because I always like to be in the know about that. And also I get a sense of how it works in terms of buying UFA years. Thank you for explaining that all to me like I'm 5 years old. I actually genuinely appreciate it.
Those cost more. That's the thing. You're going to be on your UFA years, man. You're going to be asking for double on the next podcast. I know it.
Don't get me started. I still need an agent. I heard that you are among the lucky people who were able to watch the All or Nothing Amazon series with the Toronto Maple Leafs a little before everyone else. How does it feel to be part of this exclusive club where you get to watch stuff on screeners well before the rest of the public does? I believe the series comes out on Friday.
It does come out Friday, but I binged it over the weekend. We had some rainy weather here in Toronto, so I watched 5 episodes back to back, 4 hours almost in total, a little less than 4 hours. And I really liked it. It's funny. Like I'm fascinated to know what the reaction to this thing is going to be. I mean, look, there's two obvious camps, right? Like if you're a Leafs fan, if you're Dangle or Wild, you're not going to want to watch this probably because it's not really the most memorable of seasons with the way it ended. But, I still would argue, even as a reporter, and I've been a reporter for a long time, I've earned these grays and the whiskers here.
You're just flexing that you're an older guy. We get it. You're seasoned. You got the salt and pepper going.
I'm just saying I've been around the league a long time, and I saw things I haven't seen before, and gained access, and some of it's goofy stuff and fun things. Seeing the players interact with their families, or just the way they have fun together. But some of it's also the heat of the moment stuff. During the playoffs, Sheldon Keefe just laying into the team before the overtime in Game 6. I mean, we understand that that's the sort of thing that might happen, but when you don't get to see it, I think it's actually kind of cool and impactful. And so, I wonder how the team really feels about it. I don't have that sense yet. I know that Amazon and the NHL did want them to do another season this season, and the Leafs declined that opportunity to do so. I don't want to read too much into that because, it doesn't necessarily mean they hated it, but I think it is invasive having those cameras around, and we all love the content, or we love at least getting something closer to the real thing than we can normally. But I think there's some consequences to that from an organization standpoint. And especially when a season ends the way last one did in Toronto, I can understand why they weren't so excited to sign right back up again.
Yeah. The funniest thing about this to me is that we all know how this ended. Like, right. You're not going to go into that series and be like, oh, I wonder if the Leafs are going to find a way to do this. Like, how did Amazon find a way to make that series engaging when anyone who goes into it, who's a hockey fan, knows not only how it ended, but how fans are still like reeling off of how the Leafs ended their season?
I think they did two things that work well from a storytelling standpoint. So they have Will Arnett, who's a noted Leafs fan, narrating the series. And right off the bat, he says something like, "It happened again." And it's like the handshake line and like all the Leafs sadness. And so like right off the top, they acknowledge, of course, you're watching this and this didn't go so well. The other maybe more understated thing that I think they used effectively is they showed a lot of scenes throughout the season where Sheldon Keefe is expressing concerns, with leadership on the team, talks with John Tavares or general manager Kyle Dubas, talking about how they're getting these results because they did lead the North Division in the regular season from wire to wire. Didn't really face what we would typically call a ton of adversity. I mean, obviously there's injuries and things that every team contends with in every season, but they kind of foreshadow what's coming and focus in on, I think, some of the problems the coach was seeing even while they were winning a lot of games in the regular season that sort of popped up in the playoffs and led to them freezing in the big moment and against the Canadians. And so, I think that they were able to sustain it that way. But I will say too, though, that what it does is it sort of dampens some of the excitement or hype they can build up. I mean, like last season, remember the cameras were there the whole time from day one until, they lost Game 7 against Montreal. And so they got a lot of what I would call good stuff. Austin Matthews won the goal scoring title by 8 goals. Jack Campbell set a record with 11 straight victories to start the season, the NHL record for a goaltender. Obviously the Leafs won their first division in, I think it was 20 years. It's a long time anyway, but they couldn't really hype those moments up because everyone knows there's a yeah, but there coming. But, given some of those limitations, I think with the access, you do see things, you see moments where there's arguments and tension and, some of the best of sports. I still think they did well. I just don't know how the average viewer is going to view it, if they're going to just tune it out or what. But, I would recommend, giving it your 4 hours. And I also think teams are going to watch this and not want to be too eager to be part of this because, everything can look dumb in hindsight, right? Like there's a moment, for example, one that jumps into my mind when the Leafs are making the deadline deal for Nick Foligno. The camera's there in the war room. You have Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas, and Dubas takes a call from Jarmo Kekalainen, and you can see like he knows he's probably overpaying in that moment, and you can see that he's sort of struggling with the decision to a certain degree. But ultimately he pulls the trigger, and the Leafs gave up a first and a fourth to get Foligno. They gave up another fourth to have an intermediary team keep half of his salary. And then, but we're watching that knowing that didn't work out. Nick Foligno got injured. The team didn't have any success. Looks like a terrible move. But, had they won the Stanley Cup and you had that footage, you'd be like, wow, like that was a tough decision, but, it really paid off. I guess my point is everything's scrutinized with the benefit of hindsight. You can look dumb or look like you made the mistake. And so, I kind of wonder big picture. I mean, look, I don't watch F1 races, but I did watch Drive to Survive. Like I can see.
I still have to watch that.
You should put it on the list. But I can see the future of these kind of series being great for sports. But, hockey culture being what it is, if you want to call it that. I mean, let's face it, it's pretty old school in its decision-making and approach to things at the top of organizations. I mean, it's not to say that the new players in the league don't have maybe a different view on some of the stuff, but, I just wonder how much more of this we'll see, because there's a demand there. There's an audience that craves it, but it's not always the most comfortable to have all your laundry aired.
That is very fair. So by the sense of it, they do address the failures, but they do show things with the Leafs that made them the juggernaut that they were in the North Division. And yes, I use the word juggernaut.
I was going to say that doesn't seem like a coincidence you use that word.